Okay, everybody, I'm going to get started on the NXS Designs rear suspension for my son's 2020 YXZ-1000R. I already did the front of the suspension for a different in a different video that's in the same playlist. I'm sure you can find it. So now we're going to get started on the rear. I have everything here on the table except for the other arms. This is just two of the arms, of course, one side worth. A couple things I want to point out. When Matt Ling puts together these kits from NXS Designs, he includes some nice beefy Heim joints for the rear lower trailing arms or A-arms, and then the rear upper A-arms and trailing arms. It includes these bolts, some nice long, I guess those are grade 8 bolts, I don't know. But there's some nice long bolts that need to be used on the hub end. You use the factory hardware on the frame end. And just like I did on the front, I got new factory collars and thrust covers that I'll be using there. So basically the upper rear A-arm is, it goes on very similar to the fronts. You press in a bushing here, you press in a bushing here. That's just a block off from the powder coaters. That is actually a hole that goes there. You press in a bushing on each side, you put the steel collar through, and there's a greaser that goes on there. So that's all that is. So NXS Designs does include bushings. So they include a bunch of these bushings that I talked about on the front. This is a I don't know if it's aluminum or titanium, but it's extremely light. It's got to be measured in grams. I don't know how light these things are, but the factory bushings, I think, are steel, and they are way heavier. Not that it really matters, but when you have 25 of them on your car, it does kind of matter. So, but these are the front and also to be used on the rear upper arm, and they're labeled here. He doesn't include instructions, not in the box, and you just kind of have to figure that out. But that's why I'm doing this, is I want to point these things out to you, because the rear upper bushings are the same as the front upper and lower bushings, and there's 20 of these included, because there's 8 for each front arm, and then there's 4 for the rear arms. I think that's right. Yeah, that's right. I think. No, there's 20. Hell, I don't know. There's a bunch. There's a bunch of these. So there's these other types of bushings that look a little bit different. This is for the rear lower, and they don't get pressed in or anything. They basically just slide in the Heims whenever you put the bolts on. So later on, I'll get to that. He does have these numbers on the baggies. I don't know what TC 131, 132, and 133 mean, but I do know, just because I've done this kit several times now, I do know where these go. This is the rear lower front Heim joint. This is the rear lower rear Heim joint, and this is the rear upper A-arm. So I'm going to get started on that. Just like I did on the front arms, I am going to have to, this is a little, powder coaters taped this off, and they put like a plug in there, so I got to pull that out. I'm going to grind those edges a little bit and clean it up. You can see how this one is. There, it's got some crust on it. So I'm going to do that on the rear upper arms as well, and then I'll get the camera set up in front of my press, and you'll see me press these in just like I did on the fronts, and then we'll move on. So that's one of those plugs that the powder coating company sticks in, you know, I guess a hole or whatever that you don't want to have plugged up or whatever. So just like before, you want to be careful not to take off any metal. You're just trying to clean up that crusty stuff off the edge. So I'm going to scrape the inside as well. Get a little bit of sandpaper or something, or I might try with the blade first. I know my light's not very good, but you can see there's like some green stuff in there. Yeah, see, just another, it's just parts of like one of those plugs. I recommend having a handle on your blade. Don't do what I'm doing. At least I'm wearing gloves. And then this is some just some regular old sandpaper. I just coil up a little piece. Gonna go around on the inside. I only do this if there's debris on the inside of that hole. Okay. So just like last time, I'm going to use this collar, which is an OEM part. Here's the part number. I'm going to use this collar kind of as a guide to get these bushings in and lined up correctly. So. Okay, so now I'm gonna get it on the press. All right, so I just pushed that collar out. So now what I'm gonna do is put it back in the press and just push together that last little, it's like a millimeter gap. And I do that just so that the bushings are nice and tight up against the A-arms. If you don't do this all the way, then the arm won't fit on the car, because the tabs are very precise with their sizes or their tolerances. Okay. So there you go. You can see it's nice and tight, both sides, between the bushing and the A-arm. There's no gap there. I got that wrong on the first car that I did. I'd had a 2016 YXZ, and I put a Fireball long travel on it, and I did not tighten that gap where I didn't grind off that powder coating. And I tell you what, that was a big problem. I couldn't hardly get the arms on, so I had to do it all twice. But there you go, you can see there, and it's a nice clear picture, both sides. Okay, I'm gonna do the other one, and then I will set up the camera behind the car. All right, this is what your rear arms should look like when you're putting them on. bushings are in, the collars are in, and then I got those thrust covers and the grease zerks put on. Quite a bit easier than the fronts because there's half as many bushings to do on each arm, and there's like only 2 arms in the back to do as far as those type. The lower rear arms, all you really got to do is thread in those Heim joints, and that's it. I just kind of hand threaded them in halfway, and then I have them kind of staged about where they need to go. I should point out now is a good time to find a toe strap. I have one of these, it's like a one-sided strap, so I can wrap it around and tie it to itself. The reason is I put the upper arms on first in the back and then attach the hub, or not the hub, the knuckle to those. So they're kind of hanging, and if you have a strap, I've used like wire or string in the past. You want a strap or something to kind of help hold it up and suspend it, because you want to do the rear upper arms first, and then the lower arms kind of line up to that. So that's what I'll get set up for next. This is the rear. I just put this secure nut on as far out as I can. Just make sure your threads are clean. And I put it in about halfway to start with. I will reference my other car before I put this on. These things are big. I don't know what the diameter is, but these are some pretty big Heim joints. Pretty big threaded. Okay. All right, so I'm in the back here. First thing I'm going to do, this is the factory bolt, big long bolt that holds that rear A-arm on. Like I said, I'm starting with the rear upper A-arms, and I'll show you why here in a minute. So with those bushings squeezed in and the thrust covers and everything on there like they're supposed to be, remember I made sure to press them down so that there was no gap, and this is why. It's because it is very tight tolerances to get it in between those tabs there. And the idea is that it's pivoting on that steel collar. I don't think it's supposed to pivot on the bolt. I think it's supposed to pivot on the steel collar. And so that's the longest point in there, and that's what's supposed to be you know, where what the tightest contact point is. So this is just the factory hardware. It's a factory long bolt with a washer on it. And I am not going to put a nut or the other washer or anything on it. All of this I'm just leaving loose, and I'm going to do that for the alignment process. And I'll walk you through that here in a little bit. This is where I need the ratchet strap. I've used like, I mean, I've used all kinds of different things before. I've used string or like wire that I just tie around, to just something to hold this weight for you. This is one of those straps that comes like when you're shipping, where it doesn't have any hooks, it just wraps around itself. So now the factory, these are the factory rear knuckles, factory bearings. I believe these have changed a couple of times over the years. Everything now is a aluminum rear knuckle. In the beginning, I think in 2016, all models, it was a cast steel. I think they were black. I know on my 2016 they were black color, but they were twice the weight. They were super heavy, and this is unsprung weight on at the end of your suspension travel. So it's very important that your weight is minimized out here, because it's all amplified at the end of the leverage, at the end of the traveling arm. So the aluminum rear knuckles are a pretty big, I guess, upgrade in my opinion. I think they introduced them on the SEs in 2017. So I think those were like black plastics with red frame that year. They were it's when the SS was introduced. And then I think only the SEs came with the aluminum rear knuckles. And then maybe that was 17 and 18. And then from 19 up, all models, it doesn't matter if it was sports shift or 3-pedal car, or if it was a SE or a regular car, it didn't matter. They all now get these aluminum rear knuckles. So if you have a 2016, or if you have a 17 and 18 model that does not have the aluminum rear knuckles, you might hop on find your favorite parts dealer, Rocky Mountain, or or Weller, or your dealership, or Babbitt's. All of those places have them. You might hop on and get those. These are not aftermarket. It's an OEM part, which now that it's coronavirus world, we may have a struggle getting them. But point is, it's a nice little upgrade. Okay, so the NXS Designs long travel kit includes one big bolt with washers and a lock nut, and it is for the rear upper knuckle bolt. And the difference is these tabs are quite a bit thicker, you can see here, than the factory tabs. Are flimsy little stamped steel brackets, I guess. So since they're quite a bit thicker, as you can see, the factory bolt is barely long enough to even thread a couple of threads on that nut. So NXS Designs includes this longer hardware for this bolt location to pass through their thicker tabs. I'm not tightening any of these bolts or anything yet, or any of the nuts. It's all just basically laying loose in there. So now for the, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do both of the uppers. All right, so the reason I do the rear uppers first is for alignment. These contact points, pivot points here, do not have any adjustment in them. The bolt to the tab, to the arm, the bushings and everything there. Same thing out here, there's no adjustment. It's just a bolt through a mounting hole. For the NXS Designs long travel kit, the only point of adjustment is the lower rear A-arm or trailing arm. And it has these Heim joints that are just threaded in and out. And the alignment, you got to get the alignment right. So the reason I'm trying to, the reason I do that, the upper first, is because this contact point right here, these two, the pivot point for these two pieces, that is, I guess, aligned per se, in that it is on hard contact points. There's no adjustment from here. So what you can do is use these two pieces here when you bolt them up, and that is your reference for what is a straight rear wheel. So whenever you thread your Heims in and out, that's how you get your rear alignment adjustment. And when you thread these Heims in and out, you know, this lower arm can go like this. It's not really just a camber adjustment. The more in you thread them, your rear wheel goes in at the bottom, but it also pulls it forward as well, so it messes up the toe also. So the angles are kind of funny on the Yamaha because of that. The geometry is kind of weird, and I had this battle for my Fireball kit for a long time, and I could never get it right. And then Fireball came out with an adjustable upper A arm, and I was able to get it better. I think it was better. I don't think it was ever perfect, but it was much improved that way. But the NXS Designs aligns a lot better, in my opinion. Their upper arm is correct. You just have to get your adjustments, right, so that your car drives straight and doesn't have unnecessary binding whenever it's traveling through the suspension range. So what I've done, or what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to go measure on my other car how many threads I've got on each of these joints, and I'm going to kind of use that as a starting point. And I'm going to put it all together, upper and lower, and then without shocks or axles on it, I come back here and cycle it. I just kind of feel it up and down, and try to measure the alignment somehow. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet. I would love to hear pointers on how to do a good alignment without like a laser aligning machine or whatever. So so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go measure on the other car and see if I can't get an idea. Also, it's something to point out in terms of just adjustability in general. It's threaded, so you would assume it's continuously variable, but it's really not. When you're talking about adjustments, yes, when you thread it, you can, it's a continuously moving in and out, but you have to stop these eyelets every half turn. So if that is the perfect alignment as far as distance from the frame pivot point to the wheel, it doesn't matter, because I can't stop it there. I have to finish another quarter turn or whatever. So the only way to get proper 100% continuously variable adjustment is whenever you have the threaded bolts on both the inside and the outside, and that's the way radius rods work. So radius rods, like on I think razors are this way, but You know, here, this Can-Am has aftermarket radius rods and flat tires right now. See, it's threaded out here and here. So as you turn this, you have infinite positions to get these shorter or longer so that your pivot points are correct. It's the same way a tie rod works. When you spin your tie rod, you know, it's spinning the inside and the outside. And so as you turn it, it's continuously pulling or pushing that rod. So in the rear lower arms on the Yamaha, it's not that way. You have to stop at every half turn because the outside is a hard point. The inside is what's threaded. So you're kind of stuck. If you need half a degree or something like that to get it better, you're kind of stuck with a little bit of difference there. So here's Brooklyn's car. As you can see, I've got it threaded out. I don't know, what is that? I'll count the threads, or I'll put a measuring tape on it. But it's got, I don't know, maybe about halfway, something like that. That one looks like it's sucked in a little bit more than halfway. So I'm gonna measure that and then I'll get set back up here. All right, so I transferred the measurements. I just used a little caliper here to transfer the measurements from the current car that I have to this new car for the rear Heim joint threads on the NXS Designs long travel. The front lower rear Heim joint, I have 3/8 of an inch worth of threads showing. I don't know how many turns that is, and this is just kind of where I'm starting. And then the rear lower Heim joint, I have 1/2 inch of thread showing. And like I say, that's the settings that I ended up settling on with that car, my black and red car for my daughter. And I'm gonna just start there for the settings for this car for my son. And so I've turned them, both of the lowers, to that point. I'm going to put these bushings in and attach the arms today. So I just wanted to show you the bushings. The front bushings, there's 8 per side up front, and then the rear upper bushings are all the same. Whenever you buy the NXS Designs long travel kit, you'll get those. There's 20 of those total, and they're all the same, like I pressed in those arms before. So for the rear lowers, there's 2 different kinds of bushings that are unlike any of the others, and I wanted to make sure to point that out. The way you can tell is there's these that are kind of beveled. They have a angle cut on them. And then there's these that are a different diameter than those others that are not cut. So the cut ones, or I guess I'm going to say the angled or the beveled ones. I think that's the right term. I don't know. But the beveled ones go in the front Heim joint for the rear lower arms, if that makes sense. So these angled pair go in this joint. And then the not beveled cut go in the rear lower arm on the rear Heim joint. So it goes in that joint or that pivot point. So these do not need to be pressed in. They're very simple. You just slide them in each side, just like so. And they will fall out immediately. They are not secured in any way at all until you have them bolted in place. So just carry it over to the car, and then I'll set up the camera so you see how I do that. It's sometimes a bit of a task to get both Heim joints to slide in because they kind of go in at different angles. That whole arm has to kind of go in at once. You can't put one joint in before the other. So we'll do that next. Okay, so now we're over here at the car. Basically, these bushings are just setting in each location, like I just described. And you kind of have to hold those in place while you lift the arm into the two spots. So there and there in the factory locations. So I'll kind of pinch those as I lift and put it in, and you'll have to kind of have to slide one in and then back the other. You'll probably see me struggle with it a little bit, but that's part of the deal, just because of the funny angles. So this is more or less just a mock-up. I just kind of slid that bolt in. The arm's hanging and just kind of dangling where it should be. This front chassis location is it's a slotted bolt hole, I guess. And in my experience, you have to tug on it. You have to give it some pull. So I just kind of lift the arm up here with my hand. The back one has a bolt in it. So I just lift this, and as you see, I've only got about half the bolt hole showing. So I just pull real hard, and you can get more of it to show. And one time, like with my Fireball kit, I had to actually put a ratchet strap on the arm. I put a ratchet strap through here and through there, and had to kind of pull the arm forward. So the reason I know that's where I need to be is because this is my reference. So you'll see the rear arm has no adjustments. These are hard pivot points, and it doesn't line up. The bottom arm, which does have adjustments, it does not line up with these bolt locations. So that's how I know for sure that the lower arm needs to be pulled forward. And got to adjust the Heims in order to get this to line up. So as you can see here, this whole arm needs to go forward some. So that's why I'm going to pull it forward. I already tested this, and I can just do it by hand. But like I say, in the past, I've had to do this with assistance, with like a ratchet strap, or if you have somebody else to help you. So as you saw, it wasn't too hard, but just kind of had to force that in. And now you'll see this falls right into place back here. Please excuse the birds having a fight on top of my shop right now. So there it is, mocked up. No shocks, no axles. Bolts are just kind of setting in there, and you can cycle your suspension now. The key to this step is just to make sure everything is freely moving and that your adjustments of the Heims get in the right spot. So I'm going to open up this ratchet strap. And cycle the arms. The bolts aren't tight, so of course there's no real tension or anything on them, but you'll be able to feel if something isn't quite right with your adjustments. But all of this is moving very freely, and no problems. Just eyeballing it. This surface, which is your, I guess, your alignment per se, that's what your wheel more or less meets to. That looks right, and that's it. I'm gonna kind of do the other side now the same way, and assuming all of that goes well, then I'll basically slide each of the bolts back out and proceed to reinstall it permanently, like with the axles and everything like that. Okay, so I have both sides of the rear suspension just hanging basically. Bolts are not torqued or anything. There's not even nuts on them. The bolts are just kind of pushed through. I did actually just complete the rear frame brace there, so the bottom ones here are fine. But I made all the adjustments with the Heim joints and all, and the driver's side is half a turn different than the passenger side on this front one here, so I think that's acceptable. There's one thing I do want to show y'all. This is something that you kind of run into every once in a while. The bolt does not line up perfect. There's a little slop in it. This is the type of stuff that if you have several of these types of joints in here, your alignment might be off by the time it's done, because each time you got a little wiggle here, that's a 1 or 2 degrees in your wheel alignment. So I don't like this, but I tried it, adjusting it a couple of different ways, and as you can see there, it just barely off. So all I do is hit that with a hammer. Long story short, that's the solution in this case, because I feel like it's the lesser of the evils. I tried it a couple of different ways. So I'm just gonna pull it. I use a soft hammer so I don't maul up anything, but I just kind of pull it so that it's close, and then just give it a little tap. Now I'm gonna go to the axles. So I'm using Turner Eagle axles. In my opinion, these are the best axles on the market. There's other good axles out there, but these are the ones that I love. These are actually rebuilt. I wouldn't say they're rebuilt. I just say I recently had these serviced. These were on Brooklyn's red YXZ over there, and they had about 1,000 miles on them or something like that, and so I sent them in. So that's why, like you can see, the end is looks like it's already had a nut on the end. But when you send them to them, they freshen them up. They check out the CVs, put on new boots, grease them up, and inspect everything. And if it's all good, they send you back an axle that is in like new condition. So something I like to do before I insert them into the differential is I put a drop of gear oil on them. This is the gear oil that Weller recommends. It's Lucas. They run it in front and rear differentials for the Yamaha YXZ. I believe they use the same thing in Can-Am and in like R-Max, just various side-by-sides. So all I do is put just a little drizzle, just a little bit, and I kind of rub it around, just so that it doesn't go in dry. You don't want it to And also it helps that clip, so the C clip on the end, it's a little snap ring, or I don't know if that's called a snap ring, I think it's called a C clip. Anyways, it's just in that little groove in the axle spines, and that ring helps keep it in the rear differential. So I just try to get a little grease on the splines. It helps going in, but it also keeps it, you know, distributed well. Okay, so now we're ready to insert the axle. A little bit of gear lube. The upper arm, if you leave it attached, it'll give you enough angle to do that. So undo your lower bolt, disconnect your lower arm, is the way that I do it. It's easier that way for me. And factory bolts. It's also important to note that NXS Designs provides a different bolt and nut for this upper arm. It's a bit of a different design than the OEM, so they don't use the same hardware. The OEM one has like a tube that anyways, it's just different. So you got to use the bolt, and this is the lock nut. You can tell the lock nut looks different. And the thread pitch is different. You can see it's quite a bit coarser threads than like these factory fasteners. So just pay attention to that. Okay, so basically I'm just gonna go around and put my OEM washers and nuts in place, and then I'll get the torque wrench out and start torquing it all down, so the arms will be done. This sway bar makes it kind of a tight spot, but no big deal. All right, so the book says these top bolts in the A-arm, the upper rear A-arm, are 90 Newton meters. It's right there. And then it shows, it's a different page, for the rear knuckles. These two are 85 Newton meters. This one up here is a 17 millimeter. What do I have it at? That was 85, so really close. Okay, so that's 90. So this is a 17 millimeter bolt with a 19 millimeter nut. And then these other two on the knuckles are a 19 millimeter wait a minute. No, the ones that Matt Ling provides with the NXS Design, those are 19. So that's a 19 millimeter bolt and nut. And then the factory down there is a 17 millimeter. So you got to have an assortment of 17 and 19 here. So let me change this back to 85 Newton meters. Okay, so 17 millimeters, so this is 85 Newton meters with a 17 millimeter bolt, 19 millimeter nut. Now, switching to a 17 millimeter socket, or a 19, so this is a 19 millimeter bolt and a 19 millimeter nut. Same torque value of 85 Newton meters. Okay, so that's those. Now I'm going to do that front lower bolt, which is a 120 Newton meters, and that's a 14 millimeter. So this little guy up here, that's a 14 millimeter bolt, 19 millimeter nut, 120 Newton meters, which is a lot. So let me get that set up. I think I can get this torque wrench in there. 14 millimeter. 120 Newton meters is almost all the way up for this torque wrench that I have. It's a 3/8 drive. I have a bigger 1/2-inch drive torque wrench. It's just bigger. Tight, tight. Okay, that's all the arm nuts and bolts torqued down. I'm gonna get set up for the sway bar links. I've got these really nice Weller sway bar links. Great product. Every YXZ should have aftermarket sway bar links. They go right there on each side. I'm going to do that, and then after that I will get ready to put these hubs on. So this is just factory reassembly now. For the most part, it goes the same way. This little ring. So the axles kind of float until you tighten all this stuff down, and then it all kind of pulls itself together. They don't really call for any kind of Loctite or anything, but I think it's well-known common practice, especially for rear axles on a Yamaha, to put red Loctite on. And of course, since it's a castle nut, you use a cotter pin also. So what the torque value calls for is, I'm not sure. It's a lot though. Nobody I've ever talked to in the industry uses the torque wrench. They use this thing, just a big Milwaukee Impact. I don't know how much it is, but, or how much torque it is, but it's a ton. And you just send her in. I'll just kind of check it once it gets firm. And then I put it in high gear. Good, feels nice and tight now. I'm gonna just keep torquing it until I get the holes to line up for my cotter pin. Okay, so you see the hole lines up, goes all the way through, and just got a big cotter pin here. I don't know if there's like a real way to bend these. That's the way I do it though. Kind of one goes over the middle, one goes around. So that's it. I think that's something like 500, 800 foot-pounds. I don't know. It's a ton. It's more, I think it's like 300 or 400 on spec. And I think this gun does more than that. But there we go. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I've already kind of got it assembled. Just gonna put the Loctite on. See the hole there. Getting closer. Okay. Everything feels good. Sometimes I come back and hit those with a hammer just to kind of tap them, just to get them flatter. So that's it for rear arms. Shocks I'm going to do in a separate video because I have disassembled and we're going to reassemble the shocks and then hang those on. But so this is it for rear suspension. Sorry there was quite a time gap here because I had to wait on some parts, but here we are. Thanks for watching, and leave a comment or something if you have any questions, or if you need me to give you a link or something for any of these parts. But this is NXS Designs and Weller parts for the most, and then Turner axles. So I'll leave some links in the description. And thanks for watching.